Chapter 81. Count Your Sins in the Darkness. What? Where did they go? Everyone froze. Then a shriek came from behind them, another scream in a day already full of them, and they turned. In the gloom of the alley, the cries made everything feel more sinister. The white-haired, muscle-bound man had already retreated to the edge of the alley, and the strange man they had thought to have chased off was standing behind them. How had he gotten past them and blocked their escape? White, who had been trying to slip away, froze when a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. He nearly dropped the gun. Scared, he stumbled back a few steps, keeping Noah between him and the others. "Friend, it was this guy who attacked you. If you want him dead, kill him." "Let me go, I'll pay you," White babbled, pointing at Limbbreaker, who lay on the ground in a pool of blood. Limbbreaker's men glared at White, but Noah didn't answer. He had barely spoken since he'd arrived. He raised his hand, his index finger extended toward White. White's stomach tightened. The silence stretched on. Noah didn't move, only held his hand there. The tension made White's nerves snap. "Damn it! Shoot him!" White finally screamed. Led by him, everyone opened fire. Bullets hammered toward Noah. From the tip of the purple gauntlet on Noah's hand, a yellow light flared. Lightning flashed and rolled through the air, bursting from Noah's fingertip like a yellow crack tearing open space. The lightning swept over the incoming rounds. The bullets were caught in the electric blaze and melted into molten iron under the intense heat. What is that thing?" someone cried. "Oh my God, are we fighting a god? We messed with a god," others shouted, some already on the verge of collapse from shock. Noah then sent a thick bolt of lightning at White. The man was struck and frozen mid-cry, his flesh instantly burning and charring until he became a blackened husk. The stench of burning flesh made the onlookers retch. But that was not the end. Under the gauntlet on Noah's right hand, a ring sat on his finger. Oddly, the ring fit despite the gauntlet. The gauntlet seemed to shift its space around it. The ring on his index finger glowed. From White's charred remains, a white, translucent form slowly rose, a soul in White's likeness. At first, the people around saw it and reacted in shock. Noah blinked. He hadn't expected them to be able to see the soul. He had assumed ordinary people couldn't perceive such things. He frowned, and Dark Seal, the ring, glowed faintly. The white soul thinned and became almost invisible. The bystanders no longer saw it. They looked around in panic when the soul vanished. "Better," Noah said under his breath. He made Dark Seal glow again. The suspended soul was seized by a tremendous suction and rocketed toward Noah. White's spirit screamed as it was drawn into the ring and absorbed. The fleeing thugs, already shaken by the lightning, couldn't hear that scream. They only felt fear and began to run, abandoning Limbbreaker and their boss, who were left on the ground. Their lives suddenly mattered more than their loyalties. "Mau Mau, your turn." Noah did not give chase. He spoke up at the creature perched over his head. Mau Mau's wide mouth curved into what might have been a smile. The hat, Mau Mau, lifted off Noah's head and darted into the air, circling once before pursuing the scattering gang members. It spat a gout of blue magic flame and ignited Limbbreaker, who had fallen, turning the man into ash as he screamed. Noah raised his hand and drew that soul into the ring as well. 2 souls absorbed already. Noah could feel Dark Seal's power climb. The increase was intoxicating. The thought flitted through him. If he collected every soul in New York, the United States, the world, how strong would he become? He shook the thought off. He had more important things to do right now. With a sweep of his hand, Noah formed a wind wall and sealed off the fleeing alleyway. The fastest runner slammed into it without looking ahead. Noah had infused the wind with sword chi. With his growing mastery of wind control sword art, he could unleash it with bare hands. The man who hit it was torn apart as if in a meat grinder, shredded into a spray of blood. The sight stopped the others in their tracks. Their legs buckled. Above them, Mau Mau hovered, playful, spitting flames that melted through bullets and incinerated anyone who tried to shoot him. He danced a cat-and-mouse game over the alley, igniting the ground and sending survivors scattering. Noah watched for a moment, then decided to finish it. With a flash of purple light, he blinked into the midst of the group. A wave of purple energy rippled outward from him. Anyone it touched turned to ash, their souls pulled into Dark Seal. Lightning arced from his hand, striking one thug and chaining through to the next until the entire cluster convulsed from electric shocks. Dozens fell, smoking, their life signs snuffed out. Over a dozen souls met the same fate, absorbed. The sudden surge of power had Noah breathing hard. The rush was heady. Inside the nearby room, two men in white suits, Black and his partner Leighton, had been waiting, thinking the commotion was some rival revenge. Black peered through the peephole, then saw the horror unfolding outside. "Shit! Run, there's a monster," he hissed, backing away toward the door. "What are you?" Leighton began, confused. The iron door exploded inward with a bang. A robed figure stepped through. Noah looked at the two leaders. Lyssandra's intel had put these men at the top of the list. They were meant to die today. "Today I want to see whether your souls are black," Noah said. He curled his hand and condensed magic until it squeezed the two suit-clad men in midair. They screamed as his palm tightened. Their ribs protested and cracked under the pressure. Blood poured from eyes, ears, mouths. Noah squeezed harder. With a wet, bone-chilling sound, the two men collapsed into two pulpy puddles of flesh suspended in the air. Noah frowned. He had perhaps been too quick to anger, but the deed was done. He drew out the white wraiths of their souls and, curious, exposed them to arcs of lightning. The shocks made them shriek. The method worked. Noah absorbed both souls into Dark Seal. The ring still needed many more to reach fullness, but Hell's Kitchen had no shortage of prey. He wasn't worried. Noah had Lysandra hack into the New York Police Department next. On his instructions, she submitted a tip that a gang was trafficking people out of the building. The police were stunned at the report. With enough evidence Lysandra fabricated, they dispatched officers to investigate. When they arrived and saw the carnage, many of the younger cops vomited. Their search turned up dozens of trafficked girls from all over the world, locked in rooms and terrified. Noah watched from the rooftop as officers freed the captives. He nodded once, satisfied, then rose into the night and departed. Chapter 82, Noah's Morning. "Officer, who did all this?" One patrolman asked the other as they stood before a pile of corpses, the night's work still fresh in the air. "How would I know?" the other replied, contempt in his voice. "Lately a bunch of masked vigilantes have been showing up around here. I can't stand those types, but I'll give them credit this time. They did good." He prodded a body with the toe of his boot. The precinct normally hated the vigilantes. What they did was illegal, but tonight the outcome suited them, especially the ones who abduct and sell people. I hate those the most. "But officer," the first man protested, "so many dead. How are we supposed to explain this to the higher-ups?" "Explain what?" the other shot back, shrugging. "The fact is they refused to surrender and fought with us. We had to shoot them down." He glanced coldly at his partner. "No problem." Noah flew home high above the city, admiring the nightscape and enjoying the bite of the cold air. His constitution made the chill irrelevant. Magical flight wasn't as fast as his battle armor, but he still reached the villa quickly. The trees around the property, altered by the runes, towered in strange, exaggerated shapes. He'd been planning to claim more of the surrounding land. If he controlled the perimeter, he could hide anomalies and expand his research base. Back in the villa, he went straight to the underground cultivation room to study the Dark Seal. He'd made it a habit to test dangerous powers down there so the house wouldn't get ruined. The chamber was pure white. He tossed his hat outside to amuse itself and pulled off his gauntlets. On his right hand glinted the evil ring that fed on other people's souls. The pale purple band and the golden gem had brightened after feeding on a dozen victims. "After it took those souls, I can actually feel an increase in my mana," Noah muttered, rubbing the gem. He was very sensitive to changes in his own magic. The boost was small, but perceptible. He took the Dark Seal off. The enhanced magic faded the instant the ring left his finger. "So the amplification only works while it's worn," he said. Before testing, he'd assumed the ring absorbed souls and directly converted them inside him. Instead, all of the power was stored in the ring itself. That was inconvenient, but not fatal. He could just keep the ring on or put it in his equipment bar and effectively have the same result. He slipped it back on. The power returned. The ring's method of gaining strength was corruptibly simple, which made him wary. The amplification was seductive. He'd have to be careful not to be consumed by it. This ring has to be full before it can be fused into Magi's Soul Stealer, the Book of Murder, he said, thinking aloud as he gauged the ring's capacity. I'd guess I need a few thousand souls. A few thousand. The thought made him pause. If he cleared out all of Hell's Kitchen, it might be enough. But killing that many people in one place would spark a social catastrophe. He could spread the work out, hit other cities, or even other countries. Myanmar came to mind. He'd heard dark rumors about organ trafficking there. He grimaced at the thought. Okay, test finished for now. Tomorrow I'll find a deserted island and try out Canyon Maker, he decided, stretching. He wasn't planning to substitute cultivation for sleep tonight. Noah placed one of the runes in the air and let it hover. Over the past 10 days, he'd noticed something remarkable. The runes were seeding magic into the surrounding environment. He and Lysandra had checked places where runes had previously been used and found traces of ambient mana. If the runes were gradually converting Earth into a second Runeterra, it was a transformation he wanted to study. Only when the runes were deployed in the environment did they alter the surroundings. Runes held in his body had no external effect. That's why he always summoned them outside to reshape the land around the villa. The rune's suspended energy was also slowly strengthening Lysandra and Gwen, and of course, Noah himself. As the master of the runes, he absorbed the most. He wasn't worried about the runes being stolen. Any object summoned by the system would return to him the moment he willed it, even if it were across the universe. The bedroom door clicked open. Lysandra slipped in silently, draped her coat on a hanger, and settled down beside him. For the past 10 days, they'd been sharing the same bed. Noah had long since stopped feeling awkward. After all, she was beautiful. She leaned close and casually slid an arm around him. He felt his face heat up. Lately, Lysandra's sleepy cuddles had become more frequent, and Noah found them hard to resist. He'd never been good with romance. This life, and the last, had been barren of anything like that. He'd never held a girl's hand except his mother's when he was a child. Still, he responded a little, taking Lysandra's delicate hand in his and savoring the strange flutter of feeling it gave him. He kept control of himself. Nothing embarrassing happened. Quietly, lulled by Lysandra's soft whispers, her own little ASMR, he drifted off. He woke the next morning on schedule, but for a few lazy moments he felt as though he were trapped in a woolen cocoon. A sweet, unfamiliar scent filled the air. He lifted his head and saw Lysandra's face, smiling without quite smiling. His line of sight fell onto two towering snow-white mounds pressing against him. He choked. Cough, cough! Noah scrambled upright, cheeks burning. Ah ha ha! Good morning, Lysandra. I'm gonna brush my teeth. He fled the room and bumped into Gwen in the hallway, still in pajamas and looking sleepy. Noah, why are you running? She asked. It's nothing, Gwen. He wouldn't explain. When he returned to the bedroom later, he'd act like nothing had happened. At breakfast, Noah sat with the family and looked at Gwen. She'd been at the villa for days and had yet to see the outside world. You've probably never been out around Earth much, have you? How about I take you out this afternoon? He asked. Yes. I've wanted to go out for so long. Gwen beamed, her twin ponytails bouncing with excitement. All right, this afternoon, we'll go explore together, Noah promised. This morning, I have some important business to finish up. He smiled at Gwen's expectant face. One more thing to take care of today. The Void Mission, Chapter 83. Open the Void Rift. Noah was already flying over the ocean in his armor, searching for a suitable place to test the canyon maker he'd synthesized yesterday. He hadn't allowed Lysandra to come with him, despite her insistent pleas that she could fight by his side if anything went wrong. Precisely because it might be dangerous, Noah wanted her to stay behind. He knew how unpredictable the void could be. Lysandra was a special life form, but no one could guarantee the void wouldn't affect her. As for himself, with the rune's blessing and his strong escape ability, he believed he could get away if things went sideways. And if he couldn't, he still had 2 experience cards. Surely the system wouldn't just watch him die. Lysandra's body remained on base, but her consciousness rode inside Noah's armor and navigated for him, scanning for an island. There, this one will do, she reported. They were in the Pacific, the world's largest ocean and the one with the most islands, which was exactly why Noah had chosen it. He wanted somewhere far away from civilization, preferably the Central Pacific, where an accident would cause minimal trouble. The Atlantic was closer to home, but had far fewer islands. The Pacific had thousands. The island Lysandra picked out was small, solitary, and uninhabited, about 3,000 square kilometers of dense forest ringed by golden sand. It was perfect. Noah hovered, eyeing the beach. "After this, we should buy a little island too," he murmured. "A private retreat or a research base." He liked the idea and decided he'd do it when he got back. He descended and landed on the soft sand. He couldn't feel the sea breeze through the armor, but the open beach was the only clear space on an otherwise brush-choked island, so this was where he would run the test. A few steps away from the waves, he opened the mission panel. Void Series B rank mission, first encounter with the Void, accepted. He accepted it and felt his pulse quicken. Noah drew the canyon maker from his equipment slot. The staff, its head set with a purple watchful eyeball, began to rotate as soon as it appeared, as if it were cataloging the world. He exhaled. "How do I use this?" He decided to try it. Gripping the staff, he felt its power humming. Magic gathered beneath the surface of the beach and made the sand tremble. When Noah channeled his magic into the staff, the eyeball emitted a purple glow. He pointed and fired. A purple beam lashed into the ground. The island shuddered. Birds burst from the trees, and animals fled as the beam carved a long, jagged fissure straight across the island. Seawater began to pour in along the split. Noah stopped, embarrassed. He'd expected something different. The canyon maker's power was immense, greater than any weapon he'd used before. But this clearly wasn't the Void Gate technique. He scratched his ear under the armor and tried a different approach. He pushed his consciousness deeper into the staff to feel its inner workings. A new approach took shape in his mind. Concentrating, he poured more magic through himself and into the staff. The wind whipped the tree branches back as the beach dust rose. A searing purple light flared from the staff and then shot straight up, forming a pillar that linked sea and sky. Arcs of purple energy radiated outward, slamming into the surrounding waves and suppressing them into an outward-borne swell. Trees snapped under the force. The pillar's arcs cleaved the clouds. The disturbance didn't go unnoticed. Satellites monitored the area, but interference garbled their feeds into static. Heimdall, peering through his all-seeing gaze, detected the purple power and was unnerved. Odin, still in Odin's sleep, felt the ripple as well. Even the Ancient Ones sensed the emergence of that strange energy. She opened a teleportation portal to the nearest island and, frowning at the purple pillar rising on the horizon, slipped into the mirror dimension when the energy arc began moving toward them. The power carried with it memories of futures she had seen, and none of them looked good. At the blast's center, Noah drew the released energy back into the staff. The pillar and its halos contracted as if time were being unwound until all the energy pooled into the staff's eye. Noah then traced a line through the air with the staff. A purple glowing fissure appeared, hanging in space before him. "Is this the void?" he whispered. Using the staff's tip, Noah widened the crack until it was just large enough for a person to pass through. The mission guidance hovered in his vision, clear and unambiguous. He squared his shoulders and stepped forward, slipping into the purple breach. Task complete. Gained 500 essence. Void. Tranquility. It was nothing like the nightmares Noah had been expecting when he stepped into the void dimension. Instead of writhing shadows and devouring horrors, he found a boundless expanse of soft purple. He landed and watched ripples fan out from his footsteps like stones dropped into glassy water. Noah had imagined terror and distortion, watchers, monsters, but this place was calm. That alone was a relief. He checked the system notification. The B-rank task had been marked complete the moment he crossed the rift. He clicked to settle the reward, then tried refreshing the task list a few times, half expecting a chain of new objectives to appear. Nothing did. The sky above was an endless, mysterious violet. Wisps of purple mist drifted through the air and shrouded the distant land. The ground felt like a pale purple sea, strange and beautiful. One tendril of mist floated toward him. Noah instinctively dodged. He'd learned not to trust things in the void. But this wisp felt different. It didn't try to probe his thoughts or twist his perception. It felt like pure energy. Curious, he reached out with magic and drew the mist closer. Where his magic touched it, the mist didn't resist. It merged. Noah watched, tense for corruption, for tentacles or some invasive change, but nothing harmful happened. The mist simply absorbed into his magic, and the object of energy swelled. The purple condensate was astonishingly pure, attributeless energy, so it could meld with his own power instead of clashing and exploding. He tested it, drawing some of the mist into himself and then inspecting his body. Nothing malignant sprouted. He looked out over the mist-shrouded horizon and decided not to wander farther yet. There was something he needed to figure out. System, how do I control the void dimension? Any task hints? He asked. He hadn't forgotten his ultimate objective, to make the void dimension his and become its master. He just needed a way to do it. This void dimension was born because of the summoner and has a special connection with the summoner. Therefore, the summoner only needs to permeate the void dimension with his magic to control it. Noah frowned, then touched the ground, testing the system's advice. If the rift had been created by his summoning of Cassidon, then the void would be linked to him, controllable by sheer presence of his magic. He let his mana spill into the purple earth. It flowed in smoothly, disturbing nothing, corrupting nothing. As it spread, he felt a faint, strange link form between himself and the area suffused by his power. The task was literally what the system had said: spread his magic through the void. So he did. He poured out everything he had. Over the years, and through multiple summoned templates, his reserves had grown. Apart from the magic cut, his only item to raise the magic cap, most gear increased mana quality rather than quantity. But still, after a dozen seconds, he drained himself dry, filling roughly 5,000 cubic meters of void with his essence, sky and ground included. The emptiness hurt. He felt hollowed out, but the place returned him the favor. Wisps of purple mist drifted into him, and his magic rebuilt faster than any potion could manage. The mist replenished him in minutes. The effect felt like a blue potion, but infinite. He experimented, absorbed the mist, then release his magic outward. The void would accept it, and the previously consecrated edge of his domain would act as a springboard, letting his magic expand outward from the boundaries he'd already made. He stood there for hours, an intersection of give and take, drawing purple energy in, spilling his mana out again, watching his control creep wider and wider. He began to feel exhausted from the monotony and the subtle strain of maintaining that flow. "Lysandra, how long have I been doing this?" he asked, stretching to clear his head. 3 hours have passed, Noah," Lysandra replied. 3 hours. He had lost track of time. It was nearly noon. He'd planned to take Gwen out, and he wanted to finish up fast. He closed his eyes and extended his awareness through the territory he'd covered. When he opened them, the controlled volume of void felt massive. Counting just the ground area, it's over 3,000 square kilometers, about the size of 3 New York cities, he muttered. 3,000 square kilometers was a lot to cover in 3 hours, but the void's true size was still an unknown. Online speculation about Runeterra's dimensions suggested it was Earth-sized. Noah guessed the void in this world might be comparable. He asked the system instead. This void dimension is the backside of the universe. As big as the universe is, so is the void dimension. Noah laughed, a short, incredulous sound. The system meant it. The void was as vast as the entire universe. Everything he'd done in a few hours was an infinitesimal bloom on an incomprehensibly enormous field. Even covering a single planet's worth of volume would take decades at his current capacity. Covering a galaxy or the universe itself was beyond anything to contemplate for now. He thought of runes. He'd wanted to use the Resolve rune to boost his power while seeding the void, but a system warning cut him off. Warning: the Resolve rune is not yet fully one of the summoner's powers. Using it in this void dimension may lead to severe consequences. If he used the rune now, the void might mutate. The system confirmed his suspicion. Disturbances of such scale were the province of runic forces. He could use the rune only after he'd already brought the void under his control. Sighing, Noah decided to postpone the campaign. There was no urgent reason to finish the void task now. He healed and fully replenished his magic, then took out the Canyon Maker and opened a teleportation passage back to Earth. The earlier ritual-like event with the device had apparently granted it the ongoing ability to open rifts anywhere without another huge commotion. Earth's air hit him like a tonic when he stepped through. Blue sky, white clouds, simple, ordinary things felt glorious after the silent violet expanse. He was still savoring the sea breeze when a teleportation gate opened about 10 meters in front of him. Chapter 85, Threats in the Dimension. When Noah stepped out of the void dimension, a bald figure materialized in the space before him. Ancient One? What a coincidence. Vacation too? He said, forcing a grin. The Ancient One looked over the island, already in ruins from the vibrations of Noah's ritual, and offered a faint smile that clearly meant, "Are you kidding me?" The disturbance caused by the canyon maker had been cataclysmic. The little island looked as if it had been struck by a meteor that then rolled across its surface. Forests and hills had been wiped flat, and wildlife had fled. Whether any survived the after effects was anyone's guess. Noah could only mourn for the land creatures. When he called it a vacation, the Ancient One might as well have asked, "Do you look like you're on vacation? I think you came to wreck things." "I just sensed dimensional power on Earth and rushed to check. I didn't expect it would be this, well, you're doing," Noah said, trying to explain. The Ancient One ignored his attempt to deflect and stated her reason for coming before him. Noah knew she couldn't have missed the void dimension's appearance. She specialized in dimensional phenomena. For decades, she dealt with dimensional demons and kept invasions at bay. Her experience far outstripped Noah's fledgling knowledge of dimensional power. "No matter," he went on. "You were bound to notice. Yes, the power that appeared was from another dimension." "You came into contact with entities from other dimensions?" the Ancient One asked, narrowing her eyes. If other dimensions were involved, especially ones with designs on Earth, she could not stand idly by. "No, that was my dimension," Noah answered. "What?" The Ancient One blinked. She thought she'd misheard. Noah explained more fully. The power spikes had been caused by him opening his own dimension. "You mean you have your own dimension?" she said, surprised. She had researched Noah's anomaly earlier. She could observe his past, but found his future obscured by some force. She was sure he was an Earthling. Even if his soul was unusual, he still originated from Earth. She had detected no dimensional aura on him before. Could he have suddenly gained a dimension in the past 10 days? It seemed improbable, yet, given all she'd seen of Noah's future, it was possible. She still didn't know the source of his strange powers, and this mysteriously appearing dimension was likely tied to them. Seeing the Ancient One deep in thought, Noah hurried. "This is my first time encountering this kind of power. Do you have any advice?" It was wise to ask. The Ancient One had lived for centuries. Noah had power, but relatively little knowledge of the spells and techniques he needed. She came back to her composed self. "Noah, if you possess a dimension, that makes you a dimension lord. Once you learn to control it, you'll gain tremendous power." Her voice turned more serious. "But be careful of other dimension lords. They are dangerous. If they learn that a young, inexperienced dimension lord exists, someone who can't handle their power, they will stop at nothing to seize it." She warned him gravely. Dimension lords could be ruthless. Powerful ones preyed on weaker rulers to steal their realms. Noah's power was still small in comparison, so he had to be cautious and avoid giving them any opportunity. But since he was on Earth, immediate danger was limited. Most Dimension Lords would find it difficult to bypass the Ancient One and reach Earth. "Thanks for the warning. I'll be careful," Noah said. He planned to watch out for Dimension Lords, dimensional demons, and similar beings. Dormammu, Shumagorath the Eye of Chaos, Sidorak the Crimson Lord, Mephisto the Hell Lord. Those were names he'd heard and respected. He wasn't sure Sidorak existed in this universe, but the others did, and Noah would have to keep them in mind. The Ancient One was about to say more when she suddenly frowned. She sensed many presences approaching over the surrounding sea, forces from various countries dispatched to investigate the strange phenomena. Noah had been in the void dimension for 3 hours, and there shouldn't have been any time discrepancy with the outside world. Those investigators should have arrived much earlier than this. The reason for the delay was the energy unleashed when Noah used the canyon maker. The surge not only flattened the island, but kicked up monstrous waves that threatened to become a tsunami. Fortunately, Noah had completed the void ritual in time, and the waves had subsided. Otherwise, things could have gotten far worse. The sea still churned, and the sky retained residual unknown energy, preventing aircraft from approaching. Only now were the major powers slowly able to reach the area. If they gathered here, friction and complications were inevitable, but that was not Noah's immediate concern. It looks like this place is about to become a hotbed of trouble. You shouldn't stay long, the Ancient One said. Noah, come to Kamartaj soon. I can teach you how to deal with powerful enemies from other dimensions. She planned to leave once she sensed the brewing storm, but she invited Noah to Kamartaj first. He considered it. Learning more magic would make sense. He had power, but few spells and few of the more powerful mage techniques. He needed guidance. All right, I'll find time to visit in the next few days, Noah agreed. He didn't think the Ancient One would covet his dimension. She'd guarded Earth for centuries and had a noble character. The dimensional demons whose power she'd once borrowed might not agree, but that was someone else's problem. Do you need a ride? She offered, motioning to open a teleportation portal. No need. I can return myself, Noah replied. He activated teleportation. A blue beam flared, and he vanished from the island. He keyed his destination to the true ward at his home and kept the teleportation discreet. The Ancient One smiled, opened her own portal, and returned to Kamartaj in the Himalayas. Forces from various nations soon arrived, but they would discover little. Whatever energy had been present had already dissipated. Chapter 86, Departure. The aftershocks in reality had finally begun to fade, but the repercussions across the multiverse were far from over. Several Dimension Lords had already detected the birth of a new realm and were speculating who, if anyone, held sway over it, or whether it remained an untouched, nascent plane. Opinions varied. Dormammu of the Dark Dimension and the Hell Lord Mephisto were both intensely curious. Both were searching for the new dimension's coordinates and would gladly try to claim it if given the chance. Others, like the Eye of the Beast, Shumagorath, and the Crimson Lord, Sidorak, showed no interest. In short, the birth of the Void had drawn attention from many powerful beings. Noah had, whether he knew it or not, become a hot commodity among the great Dimension Lords. He didn't know that. Noah was thinking about a much more mundane thing, going out and having fun with Gwen and Lysandra. When he teleported back to the villa, he changed into clean clothes. During the previous energy surge, the wind and sand had messed him up. At the time, he'd been focused on the staff and hadn't used protective magic on his clothing. A bath would have been unnecessary. He could have used internal magic to make himself spotless. But Noah had the habit of bathing. If he didn't, he felt restless all over. Refreshed, he heard Gwen's voice. Noah, are you ready? Let's go. She looked positively thrilled. It was her first time out since arriving, and she dressed up. A small white blouse paired with a black mid-length skirt gave Gwen a fashionable, sweet look. White stockings showed off her perfect legs beneath the skirt, and delicate leather shoes finished the outfit. She smoothed a blue spiral ponytail that fell over one shoulder. Her naturally pretty face needed no makeup. The little ragdoll-turned person smiled up at Noah with big eyes that managed to flutter his heart all the same. Lysandra's voice, low and magnetic, came from the stairwell. Noah, we should leave. He looked up, and his eyes lit again. Lysandra's style was the opposite of Gwen's, a black-belted dress under a white blazer, elegant and composed. The contrast of the dark dress against her pale calves and the sweep of slightly curled golden hair gave her a mature, composed presence. Black low heels showed the graceful arch of her feet as she walked toward them. Gwen linked arms with Lysandra and called back to Noah, bright as a bell. Noah, how do our outfits look? Pretty? They look great. They suit you both, Noah said, nodding. Two beautiful women of different styles stood before him, and he couldn't deny he felt dazzled. In his mind, they rivaled anyone in this world. Of course, I made them myself, Gwen said, beaming with pride. No way, your sewing room's finished already? Noah asked. A few days earlier, Gwen had asked to convert a room into a sewing space. He'd agreed. Gwen had absorbed a fragment of Isolde's soul and memories, which had left her an excellent seamstress. Noah had called Blitzcrank, had Gwen lay out her designs, and Blitzcrank had refurbished the room. With his efficiency, and despite Gwen's repeated revisions, the sewing room had been ready in less than half a day. Gwen nodded. "I've been in there non-stop. I made these for me and Lysandra." Noah looked down at the clothes he wore. "And these?" "Made by me, too," Gwen said, hands on her hips and proud. "No objections here," Noah admitted. The clothes were comfortable and well made. Seeing Gwen so happy, he couldn't help but praise her. "From now on, our household wardrobe is yours." At the gate, a sleek black car rolled up. Lysandra's driving. Noah's face lit at the sight. It was a Lamborghini Urus, muscular lines, and a streamlined body that hinted at power. He'd been thinking about getting a car for himself so he wouldn't have to use his battle armor or teleport for every short trip. Flying and teleporting were fine in combat, but awkward for daily life, and with 3 people in the household, a proper vehicle made sense. Noah ran his hand over the smooth paint. Maybe someday he could build vehicles of his own once he had the company and resources. For now, he was content. "Let's go," he said. Noah took the driver's seat. He'd had one unfortunate crash before, but that had been a mistake. With his reflexes and coordination, and if he drove carefully, he was confident nothing would go wrong. He wasn't cursed to wreck every vehicle he touched. Gwen and Lysandra settled into the back. Gwen gripped the front seat with delighted anticipation as the engine gave a low, pleasant growl. The car eased out through the villa gates. Noah glanced in the rearview mirror at the villa's balcony. Blitzcrank stood there, huge arm raised in a farewell wave. He caught sight of Lysandra and Gwen's smiling faces in the back seat, and feeling lighter than he had in days, pressed the accelerator and sped up into the open road. Chapter 87, Arrival and Hidden Faces. "Oh, wow! It's so beautiful!" "Gwen, don't stick your head out the window. That's dangerous." A black, streamlined SUV rolled along a coastal highway, the wide road running beside the bright blue ocean. From the rear passenger window on the seaward side, a small girl with blue hair leaned out, whooping at the view. The wind tousled her hair, but couldn't wash the joy from Gwen's face. The air smelled of salt and freshness. The sea glittered under the sun, waves smashing against the cliffs while seagulls wheeled and dove. The scene burned itself into Gwen's memory. This was the first time Gwen had seen the ocean like this. She had awakened by the sea when she took human form, but the sky had been dark then, and the water had seemed dead, the Shadow Isles. Later, when she and the Sentinels of Light hunted for Isolde's fragments, the ruin had spread across Runeterra, and she'd had little chance to see sunlight or calm waters. The panorama before her now, the bright sun, endless blue, was entirely new. She had been staying at Noah's villa and could see the ocean from the estate, but that view felt static. This drive felt like the first real opening onto the world. "Noah, it's amazing." Gwen pulled herself back inside the car, but her grin didn't fade. "It's fine. My driving skills are good, so it won't be dangerous," Noah answered without looking away from the road. His senses and reflexes were far beyond normal. He drove capably. If something truly unexpected happened, he could use magic to lift the car and make it hover. It wouldn't match the speed of his own flight, though. The vehicle still weighed a ton or two. Half an hour later, they neared their destination. Since gaining his battle armor and teleport, Noah rarely took long surface trips. His armor could go supersonic, and teleportation made global travel instantaneous. He'd spent most trips zipping between places, even into space. This, however, was different. A slow drive with Gwen and Lysandra beside him. Before he'd awakened his memories, he'd taken long drives with random classmates or strangers. Now the company was Lysandra and Gwen. The same road felt brighter with them. "We're here." They had come to Luna Park, the old, famous amusement park on the New York shore. It had operated since the 20th century, a beloved seaside landmark as popular with locals as with tourists. The lot was crowded. Noah used a brief magical scan of the parking to find a few secluded spaces and took the one closest to the entrance. "If I were a normal person, parking would be my nightmare," he muttered, closing the door. Gwen and Lysandra stepped out with him. "This is where we'll spend the day, Gwen," Noah said, turning to the blue-haired girl. "I heard girls like amusement parks, so I picked this as your first travel spot on Earth. How do you like it?" Gwen beamed. "It looks so fun. There are so many people, so lively." She was already bouncing with impatience. Noah led Lysandra and Gwen toward the street. The parking lot was underground, and they took an elevator up. It was midday, and the sun had some weight to it. Tourists flowed in and out of the park, talking about rides and what to do next. When the elevator doors opened, the three of them drew looks. Wow, are they celebrities? They're gorgeous. I saw an angel. Mom, come quick, there's a handsome man. Gwen and Lysandra were very striking, and Noah himself was attractive in a plain, composed way, now sharpened further by the effects of the resolve rune and his armor. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, but he felt a strange, quiet pleasure as people nudged each other and pointed. Noah took Gwen's hand. She looked a little bewildered, and Lysandra's composed hand then used a subtle push of magic to part the crowd. The people stepped aside and thought they'd simply made way for them. Just as they were clear, Noah's magic detected something else in the air, an unusual energy signature. Not far off, a black-haired Asian woman in a brown jacket stood watching them. Beside her was a small blonde girl with cropped hair. The woman smiled at Noah, then left with the child. Noah narrowed his eyes. There was something odd, a faint, unfamiliar power radiating from her. "Noah, what's wrong?" Gwen asked, noticing he'd stopped. "Nothing. Let's go," he said, and they continued toward the attractions. Noah was about to ask Lysandra to dig up information on the pair when she spoke first. "Noah, I know what you want. Check your phone." He reached for his device, and it already buzzed with data Lysandra had pushed to him. She'd been looking up the two the moment they'd appeared and transmitted the results without needing Noah to ask. He slipped into a small drink stand to cool off, letting Gwen pick a beverage while he read. Circe, age unknown. Current residence, New York. Possible existence since the 19th century. A black and white photograph on his screen matched the woman he'd seen. Gwen, sprite, age unknown. Living with Circe, possibly the same age. The pairing felt oddly familiar. The brief dossier listed their backgrounds, addresses, and jobs. Something about the word eternal nudged at Noah's memory. A notification chimed through his phone. A new A-level task has been released. Summoner, please check it. Chapter 88, The Day of God's Appearance in Advance. A new A-level task has been issued, Summoner. Please check it. Huh? Noah flinched. Just as he'd guessed the identities of the two people nearby, the system notification popped up. He hadn't expected that merely seeing two people, without any contact or communication, would trigger an A-level task. It caught him off guard, but it was also a rare opportunity. After how he'd nearly torn Hell's Kitchen apart for a B-level task and come up empty-handed, getting an A-level task just for going out was a stroke of luck. Noah glanced sideways at Gwen and Lysandra. Gwen was still fidgeting, clearly having trouble choosing something, while Lysandra stood with her companionably. He looked away and opened the task panel that only he could see. A-level task. God revitalize. A new celestial will be born on Earth. At the moment of this powerful life's birth, it will absorb all life on Earth as nourishment. Due to unknown circumstances, the newborn celestial will revitalize prematurely. Task content. Prevent the god's birth. Noah frowned. Celestial. What unknown circumstances? He thought through what he knew about the Eternal storyline. He hadn't watched the whole movie, but he'd seen clips and understood the plot. A celestial called Aurelion, the Judge, spread celestial seeds to life-bearing planets across the universe. When the intelligent life on a planet met the seed's requirements, a new celestial would be born from that seed and drain the planet's energy, leaving the planet destroyed. Earth had been sown with one of those seeds. Thousands of years ago, the Celestial had sent several Eternal to Earth to eliminate the deviants, ostensibly their mission, though the real purpose was only known to Ajak, the leader. 10 Eternal had been dispatched. Noah tried to recall the key details. Ajak became their leader because she could most powerfully manipulate cosmic energy. She was the only one who could communicate with the Celestial and had potent healing abilities. Akaris was the strongest warrior, with a Superman-like physique and the ability to fire cosmic rays from his eyes. Circe, one of the two women Noah had just seen, could rearrange and recombine molecules, transforming matter at will. Tina was a blonde warrior who could shape cosmic energy into cold weapons. Sprite appeared as a 10-year-old girl whose appearance never changed. She created illusions and clones. Makari was the speedster who poured all her cosmic energy into speed, moving far faster than Quicksilver. She was deaf and mute. Gilgamesh was a powerhouse who concentrated cosmic energy into devastating melee attacks. Kingo fired concentrated energy balls from his hands as long-range attacks. Phastos was the eternal intellectual, a pacifist and gifted researcher. Druig had no combat skills, but could use cosmic energy to control minds and had a vaguely sinister air. Those were the 10 Eternals sent to Earth. Officially, they were to deal with deviants. In truth, they ensured the emergence, the birth of the new Celestial, went smoothly. After each emergence, the Celestial reset the Eternals' memories and sent them to another planet. Only Ajak escaped that reset. She remembered everything and therefore knew the true mission. Over time, she grew to care for humanity and rebelled against their creator. In the movie, she tried to prevent the emergence and was later betrayed and killed by Icarus. At the time the movie's emergence occurred, it was set years after the Avengers 4 timeline, still over a decade in Noah's future. But the system's task description said the emergence had been brought forward for unknown reasons, tightening the schedule. Noah scanned the task details for specifics and found a startling line. Task duration, 400 days, 5 hours. Task duration? Noah muttered. Does that mean the task ends then? That the Celestial is born at that moment? Seeing the countdown, he realized the emergence would happen in roughly a year, less than he'd expected. He ran a hand through his hair. He'd known about the Celestial seed in the abstract, but it wasn't something he'd planned to deal with so soon. He wasn't strong enough for that. Yet the situation had already shifted, and now he had no choice. He tried to think what could have caused the emergence to accelerate. Something abnormal that shouldn't have been there had appeared, and Noah's mind froze on a possibility. If something in this world shouldn't exist, it could be him, a man with a system and a soul from another universe. What if his presence, or something he'd brought into the world, had confused the celestial seed? His thoughts jumped to the Resolve rune, the powerful life force rune. Perhaps the appearance of that rune had made the seed think the planet's life energy was already sufficient, triggering the emergence early. Of course, it had to be his doing. Noah slapped his forehead. If he was the one who caused this, then he was the one who had to fix it. A cup of iced drink was set in front of him. Noah looked up and Gwen's bright, smiling face lifted his spirits. "Thanks," he said, genuinely cheered. There was still close to a year left. He didn't have to rush straight away. Maybe he could even draw a Dragon King within that time. Noah smiled and stood, brushing off the worry for now. "Let's go. Let's keep having fun." Chapter 89. The God Group Hanging High Above. "I want to ride this." After getting his drink, Noah decided to put his worries aside for the moment. Sitting here and thinking wouldn't solve anything. He could deal with it later. Leaving the cafe, the three of them pushed through the crowd of tourists and headed for the park's intense rides. They drew a fair amount of attention. People stared. Some mistook them for celebrities and tried to take photos, which Noah politely declined. When they reached the thrill ride area, Gwen suddenly pointed across the path. "Hey, let's do that." Noah glanced where she was pointing. Iron tracks twisted and arched into the sky like a coiling metal dragon. The steepest drop was almost vertical. He could see riders' faces distort with terror, and a few people had even fainted. "You want to start with that?" he asked, surprised. He'd been planning to work up from easy to hard, but Gwen was clearly eager. Looks fun," she said, eyes bright. Noah didn't object. They arrived at the boarding platform. Watching people stumble off the ride, wobbling and sick, Noah couldn't help a sigh. The pursuit of thrills really was a human instinct. He thought of his battle armor and how much more intense that had been and chuckled inwardly. The coaster had 4 seats. Gwen and Lysandra sat to his right. A blonde woman boarded on his left. As the car crested the near-vertical drop, the woman beside him fainted. Gwen screamed, but it was the sort of scream full of exhilaration rather than fear. Lysandra simply smiled the whole time. Noah didn't feel much at first, but Gwen's enthusiasm was contagious. By the end, he found himself grinning. As evening fell, the three decided to close their day at the Ferris wheel. When their gondola reached the top, the view was worth it. The sea at dusk wrapped in a golden haze, a huge translucent orange sun sinking into the horizon. Gwen leaned against the glass, quiet and content. It's beautiful, Noah thought, something he'd never seen in reality. He snapped back to himself and remembered his habit of collecting pictures. Lysandra, let's take a photo. No problem. Lysandra waved, and a camera made of nanomachines materialized in midair above them. Click. Under the setting sun, the three of them were immortalized. Separation line cut by Gwen. Sigh. First, we need to figure out how to handle the Celestials. Back home, Gwen and Lysandra buzzed about the day's fun and places they still wanted to visit. Noah, however, headed straight to the lab to think. He had expected some downtime after dealing with Thor and Hulk. The next big event in the timeline, the Battle of New York, was still about a year away, and since Loki hadn't been sucked into a wormhole this time, but was instead knocked out by Noah and imprisoned, who knew if that battle would even happen at all? Yet there was no leisurely lull. Troubles kept stacking. First the Void, then the Celestials. Both were major headaches, but neither was imminent, which gave him time to prepare. There's no need to rush the Void. The Celestials and the Eternals come first. Noah opened a virtual display and began searching for where the Eternals might be scattered. Hundreds of years ago, the Eternals, thinking they'd already defeated the Deviants, had lost their original purpose and waited on Earth for orders from the Celestials. But the Celestial seed hadn't reached the point of emergence, so no commands came. During the long wait, fractures formed among the Eternals and they split up, living separately. Noah needed to find them. He could narrow the search using the movie's plot. He'd already encountered Cersei and Sprite in New York, which was odd because in the film they lived in London. Perhaps they'd moved later. Phastos kept to modern life, but hid behind high-tech modifications to his home. Kingo was easy to locate. He was a Bollywood star in India. Gilgamesh and Valkyrie Tina had retreated into seclusion because of Tina's mod wiry. Icarus and Ajak were missing, but likely not very far from each other. Druig was in a primeval forest influencing primitive people, and Makari, the speedster, lived aboard the Eternals' ship. From this, Noah tallied only 3 Eternals whose locations were clearly known: Cersei, Sprite, and Kingo. If he could find those 3 and reach them, Noah thought the Eternals probably had ways to notify each other. He couldn't afford to rush, though. The immediate challenge was handling the newborn Celestial. The larger problem was what came after. Noah was confident he could do the part the task required. He'd likely have to deal with Icaris and possibly contend with Sprite's fanboy tendencies, recreate the key events so Cersei could petrify the Celestial, and convince the other Eternals not to support Earth's destruction. In the movie, the newborn Celestial itself delayed its day of emergence, making it possible to immobilize it, a crucial factor since even a newly born Celestial was immensely powerful. That part was manageable. The real danger was Aurelion the Judge. Aurelion was a major Celestial, the one who judged planets and races. If a world failed his judgment, it was doomed. Preventing the emergence would certainly attract his attention, and Noah doubted they'd get a favorable outcome. He thought that, even after working with the Eternals, that it would be smarter to wait until the last possible moment to act. Maybe he'd be strong enough to deal with a 6-eyed juggernaut like Aurelion in a year. Maybe not. Sigh. I'll go see the Ancient One tomorrow and ask her about all this. Noah put away the projection and leaned back in his chair. He planned to visit the New York Sanctum and consult the Ancient One about the Void, the Eternals, and the Celestials. She should know a great deal. Time. A-level accepted. Kamar Taj forged 3 sanctums on Earth: the New York Sanctum, the Hong Kong Sanctum, and the London Sanctum. Those 3 sanctums form the backbone of a powerful magical lattice meant to keep other dimensional demons from invading. Of course, the net has small holes. Some powerful demons can spend a fraction of their power to create an avatar and slip onto Earth, and a few ill-intentioned sorcerers sometimes use dark rites to summon ancient entities. Those were minor loopholes in an otherwise vast defense, and none of them were Noah's problem. If something slipped through, he liked to think of it as an extra job. Today, Noah stood on Bleecker Street in Manhattan, in front of a weathered building with 177 stenciled on the doorplate. This is the New York Sanctum, he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Traffic and pedestrians hustled past in the city's usual hurry. Noah, however, didn't have the same urgency. No school, no chores. He'd accepted a task after midnight the night before and come now to speak with the Ancient One. He knocked on the main door. It opened with a metallic creak. The sanctum's interior was dim, the single large source of light, a circular glass window opposite the entrance, sunlight streaming through into the gloom. There was no hooded sentinel hovering in the air. Instead, a short-haired sorcerer waited on the stairs. Noah recognized him instantly. From films and stories, he knew this face. Wong, the man who would become Dr. Stephen Strange's assistant and close friend, though Strange was still the brilliant surgeon, not yet scarred, not yet on the path to Kamar-Taj. Wong stepped down, wearing the traditional sorcerer's robes, clasped his hands, and bowed in the customary greeting. "Hello, I am Wong. You must be the guest the Ancient One mentioned, Mr. Lee?" "Noah," he corrected, and returned the bow. There was a quiet kinship in seeing another compatriot here. Noah had always liked Wong's pragmatic presence. "The Ancient One is ready for you." Wong waved a circle in the air. Sparks hissed, and a teleportation portal opened, its edges cool with a faint chill. Through it, Noah could see the interior of an ancient Himalayan residence, the Ancient One's home. They stepped through. The temperature plunged, but that was nothing new to those who trained here. Kamar-Taj itself had been sited in part to put apprentices through difficult conditions. When they emerged, Noah found himself in a large, austere hall. The Ancient One sat cross-legged on a futon by a low wooden table, pouring tea. Steam rose in pale ribbons from the cup in her hand. Only she and Noah remained. Everyone else had been excused. The topic they were about to discuss warranted privacy. "Noah," she said, inviting him to sit with a raised hand. "Good morning." Or "good evening," Noah said, a small smile coming as he realized the hemispheres reversed their day. He sat opposite her and accepted the tea. It was excellent. Kamar-Taj's tea, somehow better than even the high-end leaves he'd bought for himself. He took a careful sip. Good tea. He set his cup down, then unfolded the purpose of his visit. "I've acquired a new dimension," he began. "I've never had experience handling one. Right now, I can only draw energy from it, but I can't shape or use it effectively. I wondered if you could advise me on using dimension power." The Ancient One paused, thoughtful. "I am not a lord of dimensions," she said. "I don't know precisely how a true dimensional being wields its realm, but I would suggest you learn at Kamar-Taj. We practice the ways of the Vishanti, the white magic of the Trinity. Vishanti is, in a way, a powerful dimensional force. Studying that magic might give you insight." Noah had been thinking in the same direction. He liked Kamar-Taj's practical spells, portals, mirror tricks, and he had a particular fondness for the mirror dimension. "Would you be willing to teach me here?" he asked. "We welcome those who seek knowledge," the Ancient One replied. "So long as they have talent and perseverance and are not twisted by malice, Kamar-Taj accepts them." Noah nodded. That suited him. He considered his own talent adequate. Learning there would fill the sparse entries on his skill list. He was also at an advantage. Kamar-Taj's sorcerers relied on drawing power from the Vishanti, borrowing magical energy to shape spells. Noah, however, had a different problem, or blessing. He already contained an enormous well of magic within himself. He did not need to borrow energy, he only needed to learn the forms and techniques to shape it. He pushed aside the rest of his questions about the void dimension for now. The Ancient One was unlikely to have direct answers on how to control the void faster. Better to learn spells and see what that revealed. He moved to the subject that had brought him chiefly to Kamar-Taj. "Do you know the Eternals?" he asked. The Ancient One's hand stilled on her teacup. She set it down carefully, and a distant look passed over her face. "Is that why you came?" "Yes. Do you know them?" "I once used the Time Stone," she said slowly, "and in that sight I learned of a group of superhumans who had lived on Earth since the ancient days. I even spoke at length with their leader, Ms. Ajak." Noah leaned forward. "And what did you learn?" The Ancient One gave a small, amused lift of her brow. "Miss Tile, Ajak explained their mission and purpose. I observed the Eternals, and finding their presence posed no threat to Earth, I allowed them to continue. I did not feel they required interference." Noah's next question came out before he could stop it. Do you know the Celestials? At that name, the Ancient One's expression shifted from calm to serious. Her gaze sharpened as if seeing something far beyond the hall. You know of the Celestials? She asked, the weight in her voice making clear the magnitude of the word. Chapter 91. Solution. The Celestials. The Ancient One rose from her meditation cushion. With a flick of her hand, an old, thick book flew toward her. Noah couldn't make out the title. The cover seemed to be wrapped in a shimmer of magic. She caught the heavy volume, and with another casual movement, the pages began to turn on their own, whoosh, 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 until they stopped about halfway through. Placing her palm on the open page, the Ancient One traced a sigil. A complex array of light unfolded, and a projection rose above the book. The Celestials, she said, a race that existed before the universe was born. In this universe, they kindle stars, form galaxies, and preserve cosmic order. They are titanic, armored, and wield unimaginable power. The projection showed godlike figures, each cradling nebulas and stars in their hands. Noah felt a flicker of déjà vu. This was like the legends of the Dragon King, beings who illuminate and shape the cosmos. If a Dragon King appeared here, would he too be mistaken for a celestial? The Ancient One closed the book and set it on the table. I only learned of the Celestials after I became aware of the Eternal and consulted with Vishanti, she said, looking at Noah. Noah's eyebrows tightened. Vishanti, Oshtur, Agamotto, and Hoggoth, the threefold source of Kamartaj's magic. He had assumed the Time Stone would have shown the Celestials. How could the Ancient One not have known until she spoke with the Vishanti? He didn't voice the question. Instead, he listened as she continued. The Eternal came to Earth to eliminate the deviants, the Ancient One said, reciting what she had learned from the Eternal Leader. The deviants are murderous by design, created to cull life, but they ran wild. The Eternals were meant to be the corrective. But I have seen the future. Stray deviants still remain on Earth. She paused, then her tone took on a quieter, sterner edge. That, however, is their surface mission. Their true purpose here is far darker. They are here to assist in the birth of a new celestial on Earth. The Ancient One's pupils narrowed. For a moment, her composed expression cracked with something like shock. She called the name softly. Aurelion the Judge. Noah raised his hand and wove a simple spell. A projection bloomed beside the book, a six-eyed god in red armor. He watched as the red figure detached a golden seed and buried it deep within a planet's crust. A bronze craft arrived, and 10 golden figures materialized, Eternals, who fought swarms of monstrous deviants, shielding nascent civilizations for centuries before withdrawing. But the seed's birth will bring destruction, the Ancient One said. The scene changed. The projection accelerated. The golden seed germinated beneath the planet, drawing in consciousness and life as it grew. A giant hand tore out of the ground. A colossal body broke free, and the world crumbled to ash. Tiamut, blurred by the projection's limits, towered in all its terrible glory. The Celestials created both the Deviants and the Eternals, she explained. The Deviants were designed to clear dangerous predators on life-bearing worlds, so a planted seed could prosper. When the Deviants became predators themselves, the Celestials made the Eternals, this time intentionally stable, incapable of evolution, so they would not repeat the error. Noah watched the images, feeling the weight of it. The Eternals, 10 in number, mostly unaware of the seed's real purpose. Arisham's seed waiting in Earth's core, a future in which the planet's sentient life is ingested to feed a newborn god. You didn't learn this from Ajak, did you? The Ancient One asked. The pity in her voice was not for Ajak, but for the terrible clarity of the situation. Noah answered plainly. Ajak didn't tell the full truth. He told her what he had learned and what he planned. Not all Eternals were aware of their true mission. Aside from their leader and one powerful warrior, the others thought their task was only to destroy deviants. Some had come to love Earth. If they could be shown the truth, maybe they would help. There was one Eternal in particular he had in mind. Circe. Her ability could resolve the celestial seed, Noah said. It had been his contingency plan from the start. In the original story, Arishem did not immediately destroy Earth. He judged it based on what he saw in Circe's memories. Noah planned to use that chance more decisively. He knew the emergence was close. He had learned the exact timing. How close? The Ancient One asked. In 1 year, Noah said. If nothing unexpected happens, the seed will sprout and the god will begin to emerge then. I plan to resolve it on the day of the emergence. The Ancient One pressed her fingers to her temple and rubbed, a gesture between fatigue and thought. She looked every bit the aging guardian who would rather retire than face yet another cosmic crisis, but her duty held. If you need help, come to me, she said finally. I will support this plan. Even as she spoke, she added, practically, I will look for other solutions as well. We mustn't depend on a single path. Noah allowed himself a small, grateful smile. The Ancient One's willingness mattered. Her contact with the Vishanti might tip the balance. Thank you, he said. If Circe can be convinced, and if we coordinate with you, we have a chance. Then we begin now, the Ancient One said. I will take you through Kamartaj. You will study here. You'll need everything the Sanctum and the Vishanti can lend. She rose, the projection fading as she closed the book. We have a year. You have work to do. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the seeds sleeping deep beneath their feet and the countdown Noah had set for its awakening. Inside the Sanctum, plans began to form, quiet, urgent, and all that much more dangerous for being necessary. Next, I'll give you a tour of Kamartaj. Noah stood and followed the Ancient One out of the old sanctuary. When they stepped through the main gate, snow-capped peaks rose in the distance. Kamartaj was a small village tucked into the Himalayas. Aside from the sorcerers who lived there, the villagers were ordinary people. Hidden in plain sight, indeed. In the open area outside the sanctuary, many Kamartaj sorcerers were training. Noah watched their stances and felt this was very much Kamartaj. Their magic was closely tied to close-quarters combat. As in the movies, Kamartaj sorcerers often shaped magic into melee weapons, fans, shields, whips, and used them in physical fighting. Noah wasn't surprised to see them drilling combat moves. The Ancient One must have sensed his thoughts, because she explained why they trained so intensely. Kamartaj sorcerers didn't have magic naturally coursing through their bodies. They drew power from other dimensions. They channeled the energies of the Vishanti, the source of their white magic. Physical conditioning let their bodies withstand the strain of channeling that power. Even in the freezing Himalayan nights, the sorcerers trained, ascetic, determined, and disciplined. Talent alone wasn't enough. Perseverance and will were required, unless you were an exceptional anomaly. Many of the students came from all over the world, with different skin tones and backgrounds. A surprising number also arrived with injuries, illnesses, or disabilities. Many came to Kamartaj seeking cures that conventional medicine couldn't provide, much like Dr. Strange's own story in the films, though in this timeline, Strange hadn't yet had his accident and was still a brilliant surgeon. Leading the training group was a black-clad sorcerer. The Ancient One introduced him. This is Mordo. Mordo paused his instruction when he saw them approach and bowed to the Ancient One. Sorcerer, Ancient One, he said, then glanced at Noah. This is Noah, Noah supplied, offering his hand. I came to visit the Ancient One today. Hello, Mr. Noah, Mordo replied after a brief look to the Ancient One for confirmation. Mordo was effectively the Ancient One's chief disciple. He had trained under her since early on and revered her teachings, a reverence that, in other timelines, later twisted into resentment when he discovered certain truths about her immortality. I'll take Noah to the library now. Mordo, continue, the Ancient One said. Mordo cupped his hands in reply and returned to his students. They walked past the training ground, across more than half the settlement, and reached another building. The Ancient One pushed the heavy door open, and Noah followed. Inside, the room was lined with bookshelves packed from floor to ceiling. Countless volumes filled the air with the scent of old paper and binding glue. This library could have been one of the oldest on Earth. Grimoires of magic, accounts of strange histories, collections of forgotten lore, and dangerous, forbidden knowledge. At the sight of the Ancient One, the librarian rose and bowed. He wasn't Wong. It was the curly-haired, middle-aged man who'd been beheaded by Caecilius at the beginning of Doctor Strange in the films. Noah blinked. So Caecilius hadn't betrayed them here, he thought. Do you read Sanskrit? The Ancient One asked Noah. Noah was puzzled for a moment, then understood. The Ancient One flicked her hand and a few distant shelves trembled. Several books floated free and drifted into her palm. Each was 3 or 4 centimeters thick. compact, dense volumes. "Take these," she said, placing the books before him. "They're the foundational texts of Kamar-Taj's magical lineage. If you want to learn our ways, you must master these basics first." Noah took the books and flipped one over. The cover bore strange characters he didn't recognize, likely Sanskrit. No matter, he could have Lysandra translate them later. He tucked the books into his backpack. The librarian watched, surprised. He'd assumed Noah was a newcomer who didn't know magic. After a short discussion about eternal matters back at the sanctuary, Noah returned home. The Ancient One told him she would give him a sling ring, the essential device for Kamar-Taj sorcerers, once he'd finished reading the texts. A blue pillar of light transported him back to his manor. It was still daytime in New York. The whole trip had taken less than an hour. Kamar-Taj's space was strange that way. Noah hadn't done anything dramatic there. A conversation with the Ancient One, a quick tour, and a handful of books to bring back. He rushed to his laboratory, pulled the books from his backpack, and laid them out. In the past, he might have balked at such dense tomes, but since acquiring the big head talent, reading had become easy and even enjoyable. He devoured many books and absorbed a great deal. "Lysandra, could you translate these for me?" he asked, arranging the volumes on the table. A blue light scanned the pages, and a holographic projection unfolded in front of him. Lysandra finished translating in seconds. "No problem, Noah," she replied. "Noah, you can also store this in your memory," Lysandra added. "You could learn Kamar-Taj's magic, and I can teach Gwen when you want." Noah grinned. Ancient One hadn't forbidden him from sharing the texts, so why not have Lysandra learn and teach Gwen? Although he doubted Gwen would focus for long, Lysandra was good at instruction, and that usually kept her on track. Noah tapped the projection. The translated titles floated in clear English: Book of the Vishanti, Cosmic Compendium, Key of Solomon, Supreme Codex, Kabbalah Tree of Life. Several of them sounded familiar, books Dr. Strange had studied in his training. Maybe they were standard coursework for new students at Kamar-Taj. With the big head talent, a photographic memory felt like second nature. Noah smiled and settled in. "Let's begin. I love to learn." He dove into his reading. To outsiders, 5 ancient books on mysticism might look as obscure and dizzying as celestial scriptures, but Noah had already committed them to memory in a short time, a product of his photographic memory. After reading them, he didn't immediately start practicing spells. They weren't spell books. They were foundational texts meant to introduce apprentices to the mystic side of the world before they encountered practical magic. People who come to Kamar-Taj usually have scientific backgrounds and find it hard at first to accept that reality has more than material explanations. These books built the bridge, easing that transition. The Ancient One had handed Noah 5 volumes. 4 were mystical treatises, and the 5th was titled the Supreme Codex. From the name, Noah suspected it had something to do with the Sorcerer Supreme. The book proved him right. It recorded the deeds of past Sorcerer Supremes and their insights into magic. But when Noah finished, he noticed the Ancient One's name was missing. He wondered whether the Codex only recorded those who had died, though it didn't bother him much. He planned to return the books the next time he visited Kamar-Taj, at which point the Ancient One would give him a suspension ring so he could learn the techniques used by Earth's native sorcerers. He did wonder about the suspension ring. At Kamar-Taj, every sorcerer wore one. They relied on it to use magic, and without it, a magician was powerless. Even Kamar-Taj's most important teleportation technique required a suspension ring. The ring itself was awkward, not a simple band, but a metal plate with 2 ring loops fused to it. He'd rather not wear it on his finger, so he intended to put it in his equipment slot, which recent updates had made capable of hosting items that still functioned while stored. He hadn't yet tried whether native Marvel artifacts would work there, but he suspected they would. Noah then remembered the other ring in his pack. He pulled out a golden gem set in a purple band, the Dark Seal. Before going to the New York Sanctum, he had removed this soul-absorbing ring and stowed it away. Items that devour souls to gain power sounded perilous and would attract attention at Kamar-Taj. He didn't want to draw scrutiny or cause trouble. He was a guest and didn't want to turn a visit into a bloody incident. He trusted the Ancient One enough that, if she needed dark power for some reason, she wouldn't be blindly moralistic. He hadn't used the Dark Seal indiscriminately, only on people he judged deserved to die, a standard that might not sit well with everyone, but he didn't care. He planned to go to Camartage tomorrow. For now, Noah had other priorities. Research and cultivation and the void dimension already consumed most of his time. He could spend all day working and leave no free time, but he wasn't a machine. He needed rest. First on the agenda, though, was expanding his territory in the void dimension. If he became a Camartage magician, he'd gain another way to manipulate dimensional power, but until then, this was something he could work on alone. He arrived at the underground room and called to Lysandra, "Seal the underground room completely." "Okay, Noah," she answered. The underground room was a fortress. Doors, windows, and air ducts were sealed with white metal, vibranium. The walls were overlaid with a blue energy net of hex crystal, a magical protection. To Noah, it was the safest place on Earth to open a breach. He took the canyon maker from his backpack. Its consciousness had already awoken, so there would be no wild behavior. He waved the staff and let magic flow through it. A purple eye emitted a beam that ripped open a violet rift in the air before him. The rift's edge fluttered, but stayed steady. Noah smiled. "Very stable," he said, then stepped through. This time, the void under his feet wasn't the same place he'd reached before. The patch of void there had not yet been covered by his influence. He reached out with perception and sensed the area connected to this rift lay far to his left relative to his established coverage. It made sense. A rift opened at a location would connect to the void space corresponding to that spot. The system had told him the void dimension here corresponded to the other side of the universe and was as vast as this universe. The void beneath his feet corresponded to Earth in the reality universe. He settled on a small goal. Bring the void Earth under his control first. Stepping onto the purple ground, ripples spread outward. Noah seated himself cross-legged and began to circulate magic. He released power into the void beneath him while drawing void energy back into his body, establishing a feedback loop to expand his influence. In the White Room, Lysandra recorded the rift's energy readings for future use. At that moment, Lysandra was in the villa with Gwen. The two were on the sofa, Gwen watching television, Lysandra keeping her company while recording. Distracted by the show, Lysandra still felt the shift in Noah's concern, the same subtle change she'd learned to notice. "Gather here. Target ahead." In a secret military facility, footsteps hurried down the corridor and alarms wailed. Nearby, something monstrous rampaged. Fully armed squads raced toward the source of the disturbance. "Shit, Captain, not that thing again, is it?" one soldier muttered. Their unit had been on the Abomination mission that day. They'd heard what that monster could do. "I don't know. Follow orders," the captain replied, his bootfalls steady as he reached for the iron door's release. Boom! The massive door bulged as if struck by a cannonball. The reinforcement team halted, a thread of dread running through them. Then the door exploded inward under an immense force. Ah! Gunfire erupted, a staccato of automatic weapons, and chaos filled the corridor for a few heartbeats before settling into tense silence. Humph. A single, faint, disdainful snort drifted through the now quiet corridor. Chapter 94. The Veteran Returns. Hulk is out inside the director's office at S-Healed headquarters. Director Fury swiped through a tablet, his expression changing until it settled into a satisfied smile. Just then, the office door opened. The man who entered had barely knocked before pushing the wooden door wide. Agent Coulson, breathless, as if something urgent had happened. "Coulson? Perfect timing. I was just looking at something you'll want to see," Fury said, looking up. Coulson closed the door behind him and approached, tablet in hand. "Director, I've got something for you too," he said, practically thrusting the device toward Fury. Fury set his tablet down and took Coulson's. Coulson briefed him as Fury read. The Army, under General Ross, had taken Dr. Bruce Banner, codename Hulk, into custody after the Abomination incident. S-Shield agents had lost observation on him since. "But our surveillance just picked up a riot at Ross's military base," Coulson continued. "They recorded a green figure rampaging through the base, then leaping away and disappearing." Fury watched the footage. a hulking green form tearing through the installation, then launching into the sky and vanishing after a few massive leaps. He gave a small, knowing smile. Ross failed again. The Hulk should never have been put in his custody to begin with. You can't lock up something like that with muscle and barbed wire. Send more teams, Fury said, handing the tablet back. We may not be able to control the Hulk, but we need to know where he is. Understood, Director, Coulson replied. Fury hesitated, then a different expression crossed his face. Oh, and Coulson, good news. Coulson's eyebrows shot up. Good news, sir. I'm sending you on a mission, Fury said. We located a World War II veteran who's been frozen for 70 years. I want you to bring him home. Coulson nearly dropped his tablet. You mean? Fury nodded. Search teams near Alaska found a body under the ice. He matches the description. Coulson's excitement was barely contained. Captain America had been his childhood hero, posters on his wall, a limited edition card he kept on him at all times. The idea of meeting the man in person, maybe getting an autograph, left him practically giddy. Fury slid a stack of papers across the desk. Bring him back and make sure he gets proper care, Fury said. No problem, Director. I'll get it done, Coulson said, clutching the documents and heading for the door. Fury watched him go, then turned his attention back to the tablet and the problem of the Hulk. It happened like you said. Noah sat with a bowl in his hands as evening settled. He'd just stepped out of the void and gone straight to the villa. Lysandra had dinner ready and a rundown of the news. The Hulk had broken out of General Ross's base and vanished. Noah had expected as much. Banner wouldn't tolerate being a test subject in Ross's programs. Ross wanted controllable super soldiers. Banner would be prime for experimentation. The man might hold himself together for a while, but the Hulk would not. The cause and effect was obvious, and Noah had seen it play out. The Hulk erupted and escaped. Whether Banner would reach out to him was another question. But if Banner could not stand a life on the run, then Noah hoped he'd remember Noah's earlier offer. I should get ready too, Noah said. If Banner was loose, Noah needed to accelerate his plans, establish a company, expand his research base. The cramped space he had now wouldn't support the large projects he envisioned, like Hextech mechanical beasts. As for funding, he'd stopped thinking of selling vibranium as his primary resource. His reserves, however substantial they seemed on paper, wouldn't last under sustained development. Noah admitted he'd misjudged vibranium demand back when he hadn't yet built a proper lab. He'd been wrong about how quickly it would be used up. Money, though, wasn't the real problem. Lysandra handled that. The internet and the flow of digital credit was her domain. She could manipulate numbers with a few keystrokes and make them mean anything. If she wanted, she could make herself the richest person on Earth overnight, but she wouldn't. Lysandra was too cautious. They had to be discreet, or someone would notice. Lysandra, I'll leave the financial side to you, Noah said, shrugging. He didn't know how to manage those things. She knew the market and the web far better than he did. No problem, Lysandra replied, already thinking through ledgers and contingencies. On the edge of a desolate mountain forest, a man in nothing but shorts climbed out of a deep pit and looked around, bewildered. The cold wind made him hug himself. Then, after choosing a direction, he started moving. This half-naked man was Dr. Bruce Banner, back in human form. He had done this many times now, wake up in an unfamiliar place with only the clothes the Hulk had left him. Banner found a sheltered spot and, using scrap wood and dry leaves, built a small fire. He was a genius with several doctorates. Improvising a shelter and starting a blaze were not beyond him. He sat by the flames, the firelight playing across his tired face, thinking about what had happened and what was coming. He had escaped the military that time with the Hulk's help, but he knew General Ross would not relent. The next hunt would come soon, and the cycle of running would begin again. Yet something someone in high-tech battle armor had said to him nagged at him, and a small, stubborn hope sparked in his chest. Maybe, he whispered into the night, maybe I can finally get out from under Ross's shadow. Chapter 95, Awakening of the American Team. A man with blonde hair and a soldier's bearing opened his eyes on a stainless steel hospital bed with a white mattress. The room wore a 90s aesthetic, warm orange light from a bedside lamp, thick curtains, and an old wooden radio playing a baseball game. An overhead fan spun lazily, its slow rotation making him wonder if it might fall. The radio voice called the plays. Pitch, strike. He bends, swings, curveball. Rizzo scores. LaRussa, or rather, Laser, heads to third. He sat up immediately, trained instincts surveying the scene for threats and facts. The door creaked open, and a woman in a white blouse and a long brown skirt stepped in. Her hair curled at the ends. Her makeup was of an older style, familiar to him in a way that tugged at a memory. "Good morning, or rather, good afternoon," she said. He squinted at her. "Where am I?" "You're in a post-operative recovery room in New York," she answered, smiling as she tried to be reassuring. The radio kept jabbering about the Dodgers, about an ongoing game. The sound grabbed him. He turned to the window and took in an exterior built to look like the past. Something was wrong. Everything felt staged, as if reality had been painted on a backdrop. "Where exactly is this?" he repeated, more sharply. "This game, I was there. It was in May 1941, he blurted, voice tight as memories flashed back. The war, the fight for the Tesseract, the plane, falling, then nothing. The woman's smile faltered. She took a step back as he stood and advanced. Out of sight of his face, she held a small device behind her back. A tiny red light blinked. Calmly, she pressed its button and said, "Captain Rogers." The device called reinforcements. 2 armed men in unfamiliar uniforms burst through the door. Before they could react, Steve Rogers moved. He slammed into them and sent them flying through the drywall. The wall exploded outward, revealing a dim, cavernous space beyond. What had looked like a real clinic was actually a temporary set of foam and plywood. The window view had been a painted backdrop. He ran through the breach and down a corridor, adrenaline pushing him toward the only available exit. An alarm crackled overhead. "All agents, emergency alert." The woman's voice screamed over a walkie-talkie. He burst into a larger area and found himself facing a floor-to-ceiling pane of glass and a crowd of people in black suits who turned to look at him. Steve ran on, forcing his way out into a street. At first, he didn't notice the scale of the change. Towering skyscrapers, flashing billboards, fashions he didn't recognize. Crowds moved differently. The noise was overwhelming. Black vehicles screeched to a halt and agents spilled out. Then a calm, rough voice called from behind him. "Hey, easy there, soldier." He turned. The man addressing him was a broad-shouldered black man in an eye patch and an all-black outfit, Nick Fury. "Listen, I apologize for the little show back there," Fury said. "We thought it best you eased into things." "Ease into what?" Steve asked. Fury's expression didn't change. "You were frozen for 70 years. At the words, time rearranged itself in Steve's head. 70 years. The people he'd known, friends, family, the life he remembered, had aged, were gone, or had moved on. A stabbing remembrance hit him harder than anything else. A date he'd set, Peggy Carter. Fury watched his face carefully. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Steve managed a bitter smile. "I'm fine. It's just I missed a date." Fury's jaw tightened, but he kept his face neutral. He knew who that date had been with. Peggy Carter, once his ally and love, had survived, but she lived with Alzheimer's now. Fury judged this was not the moment for that news. Too much at once could break a man who'd already been pulled from a frozen grave and thrust into a world he didn't recognize. Better to let him breathe, let him adjust, and then tell him the rest. They ushered Steve back to Heald, where he would be shown the decades that had passed and what his place in this changed world might be. "No? Lysandra, are you saying Nick Fury and the others have already recovered Captain America?" Noah's seaside manor still sat as it always had, hugged by towering trees. Waves smashed against the cliffs below. From time to time, huge, mutated fish, products of the Resolve rune's rampant vitality, punctured the surface, spraying brine over the rocks. To prevent the creatures from escaping into the wider ecosystem, Lysandra had rushed to string protective nets across the sea and forest. Some beasts had already slipped through before they were contained. Those escaped were Noah's problem to handle. "Yes," Lysandra replied. "They found his location 5 days ago. Captain America has just awakened." "That means the Avengers are basically coming online," Noah said. "Except Loki's already detained. Does that mean the Battle of New York will still happen?" Lysandra's eyebrows rose. Noah traced the threads of the old timeline in his head. Loki falling through a wormhole, being captured by Thanos, then being given the Chitori and a scepter to retrieve the Tesseract. If Loki was already imprisoned, how would events proceed? Noah knew Thanos' methods. He was patient, cautious. Thanos wouldn't move outright until he was sure where every Infinity Stone was. Acting prematurely would alert enemies across the cosmos. Noah wasn't particularly worried. If Thanos did come, Noah thought, he would find ways to counter him. Secretly, he even hoped some trouble would arise. Trouble meant a task, and tasks were what kept him occupied. Whether Thanos comes or not will show itself soon enough, Noah said. I'll handle it. No need to worry too much. Chapter 96, Camartage Spells. Whether Thanos comes or not will become clear soon. Either way, I should be able to handle it, so there's no need to worry too much. Noah was still in the training room. 5 days had passed since he returned to Camartage with the ancient books. The day after he finished reading them, he went back to the New York Sanctum and asked the resident sorcerer to open a teleportation portal to Camartage. The Ancient One began teaching him the sorceries of Camartage. After Noah acquired the suspension ring, she also taught him how to contact the Vishanti and borrow their power. At first, Noah didn't cast Camartage magic using his own internal energy. Like the other sorcerers, he attempted to communicate with the Vishanti and use their power. When he first reached out, he felt the Vishanti's presence, vast and powerful, a force he could sense in the energy they supplied. Borrowing power from the Vishanti came with conditions. Borrow implied repayment. The pact Camartage sorcerers made was simple and not cruel. They could use the Vishanti's power in life, but at death, their borrowed power returned to the Vishanti. It was a mild price compared with the bargains other cosmic entities demanded. When Noah attempted to connect, the Vishanti seemed to already be aware of him and proactively allocated some power to him. He hadn't even asked yet. The Vishanti simply gave. Noah was puzzled but relieved. He checked the energy, found nothing wrong, and used it. 5 days in, Noah had mastered several basic Camartage spells: the Rings of Ragador, the twin-hand shields Doctor Strange used, energy whips, and teleportation portals. These 3 were the spells he used most confidently. He'd also learned the common Camartage weapon shaping, creating weapons of pure energy. He found that spell less useful. He already had physical weapons, and it made more sense to infuse those with magical energy than conjure an entirely new one. Noah had also been taught a wind-based spell that suited him well, the Winds of Watumb. In the films, Doctor Strange used it for everything from blowing away dust and separating pedestrians to controlling objects and stopping tidal waves. Beyond those 4, Noah wasn't yet proficient in the more advanced arts. The Ancient One's body of Hogarth that turns powerful attacks into intangible energy, Echo's form, which generates countless clones, the Bolts of Balthak, a rare offensive spell, the Crimson Bands of Cedorak, a binding power, the Shields of Seraphim, Strange's strongest defensive magic, capable of withstanding ship impacts, and the Mirror Dimension. He wanted to learn the Mirror Dimension and Astral Projection. The latter might be easier once he summoned the hero Shen, but he hadn't reached those levels yet. He'd also jotted down minor spells to learn later, and discovered that Camartage taught energy projection spells that function like fireballs. They were rarely used because they demanded enormous energy that most sorcerers couldn't spare. Zzz! A yellow electrocution blade formed in Noah's hand, arcs of electricity crackling around it. He was testing whether his internal energy could cast Camartage sorcery. Using the electricity control ability granted by the blade, he found that his personal magic could indeed fuel Camartage spells. Bang! The lightning whip cracked through the air. Compared to the energy the Vishanti had lent him, the whip made from Noah's electrical power was even stronger. But Noah wasn't overly interested in raw offense. He preferred functional spells, teleportation portals, astral projection, the mirror dimension. He dismissed the whip, extended his hand, and began tracing sigils in the air, picturing a specific location in his mind. Sparks appeared out of nowhere and expanded into a circular teleportation portal. Once learned, a Camartage teleportation only required the caster to envision the destination. The portal would open to that image. Noah stepped through and arrived in a familiar place, his apartment living room. The portal behind him faded without maintenance. It's worth noting he wasn't wearing the suspension ring. Kamartaj sorcerers typically relied on it to open portals and channel magic, but Noah found the ring cumbersome and stored it in an equipment slot instead. This was his first test of placing a Marvel artifact into his equipment interface, and the portal's success proved it worked. A new idea took shape. Perhaps he could one day slot Infinity Stones into his equipment and become unstoppable. Back in the training room, Noah wanted to test the maximum range of his teleportation. He had Lysandra display an image of the moon's surface and tried to open a portal there. Drawing the circles and picturing the moon, the portal slowly formed. Whoosh! As it opened, the air in the room surged toward the portal in a violent rush. Noah braced himself and wrapped his body in magic. Lysandra sealed the training chamber. The moon is a vacuum, so opening a portal to it created a pressure differential. Air on Earth rushed through the gateway toward the moon, and the sealed training room quickly became depressurized. In vacuum, Noah waved his hand, but nothing happened. Without atmospheric resistance, a hand swipe gives no reactive force. Astronauts move in space with thrusters or robotic arms, but Noah had no need for that. He willed it, and a glow of magic cloaked his body, providing propulsion and control. With this aura, he moved freely. I actually made it to the moon. He looked up at the blue jewel of Earth, beautiful and distant. Opening a portal to the moon felt nearly as far as his teleportation could reach. If he wanted to extend the range, he'd have to practice. He also realized that two of his own skills, the commonly used summoner skill, teleport, and the nearly dormant flash, seemed to raise his teleportation mastery. He planned to study them closely, especially flash. It felt like it held tremendous potential. There wasn't much to see on his side of the moon, sand and craters. He almost forgot the Inhumans lived on the far side. Contacting them could wait. After a brief look at the perfect view, Noah turned and stepped back through the portal. Once he returned to Earth, the portal shrank and vanished. Chapter 97. Feel the Power of Space. Noah had drawn 3 summoner skills so far: Ghost Step, Teleport, and Flash. Ghost Step and Teleport were skills he used often. Flash he almost never used. After summoning Ezreal, Noah had hardly ever needed Flash. Ezreal's Arcane Shift was simply more convenient, especially with its short cooldown and near-continuous chain ability as long as he had mana. Then he summoned Kassadin and acquired 2 Ascended Gauntlets, which greatly enhanced Noah's spatial jumping ability and made Flash feel even more redundant. That didn't mean Flash was useless, just unnecessary. Arcane Shift and Void Walk covered most of what Flash could do. But Teleport was different. He had seen what it could do with a ward. It could even reach the other side of the universe. Noah wanted to study Flash carefully, hoping to uncover any hidden power it might hold. The portal between Earth and the moon had closed, and Lysandra had reopened the ventilation in the cultivation room, restoring the vacuum chamber to normal air pressure. Back in the room, Noah sat cross-legged and began to perceive the powers inside him. The system hadn't simply pinned 3 icons onto him like in a game. It had transmitted 3 streams of power into his being. Noah used skills like Teleport by channeling those streams. He felt a surge of magic. His long-term cultivation and stacked equipment had made his magic potent. Deep in his power source, he could now sense the energies of the 3 summoner skills: blue magic, purple magic, and golden magic, corresponding to Ghost Step, Teleport, and Flash. But the purple orb of Teleport had a faint trace of gold. Noah frowned. Is Flash's power eroding Teleport, or is Flash augmenting it? He probed the sensation and decided it was more likely a superposition. Both Flash and Teleport were spatial powers. Perhaps Flash could enhance spatial magic in general. If so, his idea might be possible. He had wanted to see whether Flash's hidden power could boost his teleportation gate magic, and this looked promising. The power the system had lent him was wholly his to command. He reached for the golden power and started to explore the mysteries of space. Almost immediately, that deep alien power washed over him. In the pristine white room, he sat in the center, eyes closed, focusing on the golden current. A breeze that wasn't there before began to stir his clothes. He isolated his mind from the world. His breathing steadied, his body seemed to merge with the surrounding space. He felt a kind of legendary unity with the cosmos, losing form and self, desire and demand. The space around him rippled, and a strange force manifested. Noah's perception climbed. His awareness strengthened, and then his tightly closed eyes popped open and a golden light flared from his pupils. Time seemed to stop. With a mysterious tug, his consciousness expanded outward like a soul leaving its body. It shot out of the cultivation room and ascended past Earth in an instant. As his awareness traveled, he sensed a location on Earth emitting a potent spatial force. He knew it was the Space Stone. In that state, having comprehended Flash's spatial power, Noah felt he had merged with the universe. His vision stretched and his consciousness began to leap at superluminal speed. Cosmic vistas flashed by. Distances collapsed and he roamed through the boundless universe, the 9 realms, the dark dimension, the hell dimension, the crimson dimension, even his own void dimension. He glimpsed powerful entities sensing intrusions, but his speed was so great they could not identify what passed through. The mysterious cosmos stretched out before him. He perceived the locations of other infinity stones, similar to the Tesseract on Earth. When his consciousness reached what felt like the edge of the universe, it was as if a rubber band had been pulled to its limit. Then a force yanked him back. His vision snapped inward, and in a moment, his awareness returned to his body. Noah shuddered where he sat. The golden light in his eyes faded, and his face showed confusion and shock. He hadn't expected such an experience the first time he tapped into Flash. The visions replayed in his mind like echoes. He tried to dive back into the golden energy, but the earlier sensation did not return. Disappointed, he withdrew, feeling that initial bout of insight had been a beginner's boon. To reach it again, he would have to train hard. Still, the experience left him with a markedly improved grasp of spatial power. Flash and Teleport's cooldowns had shrunk, and their effects strengthened. Flash, once good for only 10 or 20 meters, had gradually grown as Noah's strength rose. Now, after testing, a single Flash could cover over 1,000 meters. He'd even teleported to the sea surface in one use. Teleport, however, still required a true sight ward to anchor a destination. Although, through his refined perception, Noah now detected faint auras other than wards that might one day serve as teleportation anchors. He believed that, with further development, he would be able to travel anywhere in the universe without needing a true sight ward at all. Arcane Shift and Void Walk had also become more potent. His teleportation gate magic, the very thing he'd hoped to boost, had expanded dramatically. Its range now reached roughly 5 times the Earth-Moon distance, and that was only the beginning. After the vision, a pull lingered in his senses, a strong spatial call. In Noah's perception, there was only one artifact on Earth that housed such concentrated spatial force. The Tesseract? Chapter 98. The second phase of the Cosmic Cube plan is implemented. The Tesseract holds the Space Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones. Crush the Tesseract and you can reach the Space Stone inside. The object's history was tangled from the start. After the ancient war between Asgard and the Frost Giants on Earth, Odin stored the Tesseract on Earth because Asgard already possessed 2 Infinity Stones. Keeping 2 stones together invited greed, so they split them up. Later, the Tesseract fell into Hydra's hands. Red Skull used it to develop weapons that were far ahead of their era. When Captain America defeated Red Skull, S.H.I.E.L.D. recovered the Tesseract and began studying it. Director Fury even wanted to replicate Red Skull's work and explore energy weapons powered by the Tesseract, so he brought in Dr. Eric Selvig, one of Thor's close human friends, to help. The Tesseract's power, however, remained unstable. Loki exploited that instability, and with aid from the Mind Stone, he traced the Tesseract and opened a teleportation portal to it. Recently, Noah had sensed that the Tesseract's energy was destabilizing again. If Thanos intended to invade Earth, he would likely act soon, and Noah needed to prepare. Noah didn't worry about the fate of the whole world. He wasn't some omniscient sage. The Chitauri attack on New York might be catastrophic for civilians, but for him, it meant high-level missions and possibly salvageable Chitauri tech. He assumed Americans could defend themselves well enough. There were gunfights every day in the free U.S., after all. Besides, in the movie-style scenario, the Chitauri force was constrained by the size of the Tesseract portal. They couldn't flood Earth all at once. They would trickle through into New York airspace. Noah was confident he could mop up the scattered Chitauri before the tunnel expanded, especially if the Avengers showed up. If he evacuated civilians ahead of time, the damage could be limited. The exact outcome would depend on how events unfolded. Loki was already in custody, and whoever came next was unknown. Noah suspected Thanos might send his Black Order. In the film, Thanos relied on them more than anyone else. When soldiers come, stop them. When water rises, damn it, Noah told himself. No use overthinking. Finish today's mission first. He felt confident. Thanos wouldn't show up that early, and his lieutenants should be manageable. For the last 4 days, he'd completed a sea-level mission a day and earned 400 essence points farming the small monsters in Hell's Kitchen. A portal sizzled open nearby, a scream echoed, and the mission was done in seconds. Sizzle. A teleportation portal opened. Ah! Someone screamed. Mission complete. Essence sizzle. The portal closed. Noah pocketed the sinful souls and essence. Current essence, 3,500 points. After the Battle of New York, I should have enough for another 10 pull, he muttered, closed his inventory, and got on with his day. In S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Director Nick Fury sat behind his desk, his face as dark and unreadable as ever, though the way he rubbed his brow betrayed how tired and troubled he was. He'd just finalized Captain America's daily arrangements and sat through the World Security Council meeting. So many new variables had entered the world that Fury felt the strain. The government had set aside the Iron Man situation for the moment, but the new masked hero, the swift-wind swordsman, was now a matter the Council wanted S.H.I.E.L.D. to investigate. Fury already knew the swordsman's identity, but he couldn't reveal it. Noah was powerful, possessed an advanced AI far beyond normal technology, and likely had an unknown organization backing him. Fury wouldn't risk having short-sighted politicians do anything reckless. Thor and Loki's arrival had only added complications. Their presence proved the power of Asgard existed, and the World Security Council demanded S.H.I.E.L.D. find out more. Fury had no idea how to reach Asgard. All he knew was the Bifrost allowed travel across the cosmos. His agents had even questioned Thor's 3 Earth friends who'd been to Asgard, but the reports were useless, only that Asgard's banquets were a lot of fun. Fury couldn't very well write Asgardian fairy tales and hand them to the Council. Still, Fury had a long-standing plan. Gather Earth's brightest and strongest to form a team capable of handling extraordinary threats, the Avengers Initiative. Captain America's emergence had nearly completed that roster, but the Council refused to greenlight the initiative right now. Instead, they ordered him to relaunch the second phase of the Tesseract project, research and development of energy weapons. Funding and authority came from above. He had to comply. So the Avengers Initiative went on hold while S.H.I.E.L.D. hunted the right talent to study the Tesseract. He already had a lead, Eric Selvig. The astrophysicist's expertise made him ideal for Tesseract work. Fury picked up the phone and called Agent Phil Coulson. "Coulson, I'm putting this on you," Fury said. "No problem, Director," Coulson replied. Then, a little hesitantly, he asked, "How's Captain doing?" "Steve's holding steady. Emotionally, he's calmer than when he first woke, but he's not fully adjusted to the new world yet." Fury paused. "You want to see him?" "No." Coulson's voice carried respect and restraint. "I'll wait until he's settled." Coulson left to find Dr. Selvig and bring him to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secret research base. Fury leaned back, chin in hand, and kept turning things over in his mind. There was another, thornier problem, the mole Noah had mentioned. Fury had opened an investigation immediately upon learning of it, but had found no leads. If that continued, he'd have to use covert methods to root it out. His eyes flickered as he considered his next moves. In a short time, the world had surprised him twice already. He'd need to be ready for whatever came next. Chapter 99, Tony's Destroyer Suit. Jarvis, prepare to begin the 50-second experiment. Tony Stark's villa sat on the coast, and his laboratory was buried beneath it. Right now, he was in the subterranean lab, hunched over a workbench. Anyone who followed him downstairs would notice the air was much hotter than outside. Sweat collected on the skin in seconds. Tony wore a black tank top, wiping his face with a towel. The arc reactor on his chest sent a pale blue glow through the fabric. The heat all came from a furnace shoved into a corner of the lab. That furnace hadn't been there originally. It was the result of the destroyer armor wreckage he'd hauled back from that New Mexico town. Ever since he brought the fragments home, Tony had been obsessively studying them. This was who he was. Once something grabbed his curiosity, he couldn't let it go. At first, he tried melting small pieces in his regular lab furnace, but it couldn't reach the temperatures the metal required. For comparison, tungsten, one of the highest melting point metals on Earth, fuses at about 3,422 degrees Celsius, and his little furnace barely got into the hundreds. That only made Tony more intrigued. He converted the garage next to the lab into a mini foundry, moved his collectible cars outside temporarily, and built a furnace capable of absurd temperatures. Piece by piece, he raised the heat, testing the wreckage, until finally, by Stark standards, he pushed it to a peak on the order of 50,000 degrees Celsius, Marvel physics, and the metal liquefied. What poured out wasn't ordinary metal. Uru, the mythic material that dwarven smiths used to forge weapons like Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, was known for its hardness and affinity for magic. Ordinary Uru doesn't do anything on its own, but the destroyer had been forged by the dwarves for Odin. Tony had a hunch that the Uru he melted from the destroyer hull might retain some of whatever made that armor powerful. He couldn't research magic. He was a technologist. But maybe the energy from his arc reactor could unlock something in the alloy. Nanotech development would take time. Working with this salvage offered a quicker route to a more powerful suit. "All right, sir, beginning the 50-second experiment now," Jarvis reported. Tony wiped sweat from his brow and stared at the newly forged armor on the bench. Wires and sensors ringed the suit, feeds to measure the energy thresholds needed to wake whatever lay dormant in the alloy. 51 tries were behind him. With each run, he felt closer. 3, 2, crackle. The test leads around the suit burst into blue light. The arc reactor in the suit's chest lit up. Tony held his breath as strange, glowing markings began to crawl across the armor's pale surface. Having done his homework on Norse things after learning they might be real, he recognized the script. Runes. They spread over the plates in slow, deliberate lines, bathing the metal in a cold, alien glow until every blank patch was covered. Then, as suddenly as they'd appeared, the runes winked out. A massive pulse of energy rolled out from the suit and slammed into the room. "Shit!" Tony dropped behind a workbench instinctively. The shock sent small tools and equipment skittering across the floor. Some lights popped. The furnace held. If it hadn't been bolted in and built like a tank, the lab would have been wrecked. When the wave passed, he climbed up and inspected the armor. It was markedly different from his usual designs. The silhouette read like a miniature destroyer, spiked, severe, yet it still wore Iron Man features. A circular arc reactor on the chest, Tony's helmet shape softened into his aesthetic. The finish was a mix of silver black and platework that suggested both alien smithing and Stark engineering. Imagine the classic red Iron Man accent swapped for a cold blue. "It worked?" Tony asked, more to himself than to Jarvis, as he straightened a toppled mechanical arm. The arm was one of his college-era inventions, Dumb E, clumsy but cherished. He patted the metal like a puppy. "Sir, given the observed output and the activation of runic patterning, the experiment has been successful," Jarvis replied. "Caveat, the suit consumes substantially more energy than previous prototypes. At full operational load, it will deplete a single arc reactor very rapidly." Tony scanned the suit. Traces of blue energy arced across the plates. The armor's arc reactor glowed brighter than anything in his closet. "No problem," he said. "I'll fit a few more arc reactors, or redesign one to supply more juice. Easy." "I can't wait," he added, eager for Jarvis to assist him into the armor. "Sir, the new suit has not been fully tested." "Personal experience trumps simulation," Tony interrupted with a grin. Jarvis did not argue with that, and the system guided the armor plates as they closed around him. "Oh, shit," Tony muttered as the suit sealed. The feeling was unlike any he'd known, a pressureless strength that spread into his limbs, a power translation that felt simultaneously mechanical and other. It wasn't just more thrust or armor plating, it felt as if the suit itself was lending him something more fundamental. He reached out and brushed the alloy. Blue motes danced along the surface, responding to his touch. "Sir, warning," Jarvis said. "Systems indicate higher than anticipated coupling between the arc reactor and suit architecture." Don't be such a worrywart, Tony said, delighted. Let's take her for a spin. The suit stepped away from the deck and hovered. The repulsors burned with an icy blue hue, and for a moment the whole thing looked like a living piece of enchanted machinery. Then the thrusters kicked, and the suit shot down the underground flight tunnel, propelling itself out of the lab in a streak of blue light. Chapter 100, Powerful Battle Suit. Oh yeah, this feels amazing, Tony shouted as he tested the new Iron Man suit in the sky. By every measure, this was the most powerful suit he'd built so far. In speed, it could hit Mach 4. His upgraded Mark 6 could also reach Mach 4 once he tweaked its arc reactor, but the Mark 6 had been built from much lighter materials. For a heavier suit to match that speed said a lot about its performance. The defensive properties of the metal were beyond most Earth alloys. Only vibranium or adamantium, in Tony's mind, might be comparable. He hadn't had a chance to properly test its offensive systems yet, but this destroyer suit was unlike his previous models. It lacked the usual missile bays and palm repulsor modules, not because he didn't want them, but because the metal's hardness made precision modifications difficult. Still, he wasn't worried. The destroyer's integrated laser alone seemed more powerful than any armament he'd put on earlier suits. It didn't require the clunky palm repulsor device he'd almost used to vaporize his underground workshop during another test. And there were other mysteries. When he activated the suit earlier, strange runes had lit up across its surface. Those runes probably had functions of their own. If he studied them, he might unlock more capabilities. Magic, this unknown field, is really intriguing, he mused. Thor's arrival had shown him an entirely different side of this world, but Tony wasn't ready to drop his exploration of its science. He was especially interested in the nanotech Noah had demonstrated and had already started looking into it. All right, time to see what this new toy can do. He flew out to an uninhabited mountain range, somewhere desolate and empty, the perfect place to test destructive power without collateral damage. He remembered flying over this area when he first built the Mark II. Back then, 2 military fighters had chased him, and he'd ended up taking one out. Well, technically, the other side had blown it up themselves, but the chase had happened because the Mark II lacked anti-detection systems and showed up on military radar. After that, he always added stealth to his suits. This destroyer suit didn't have anti-detection either, but he'd warned Rhodey in advance and had given him a suit which smoothed things over with the government. Nobody would bother him now. He landed with a heavy thud, kicking up dust. The landscape was dry, scrubby, no trees, just yellowed earth and low weeds. Perfect. Okay, Jarvis, let's test that powerful laser, Tony said out of habit. I'm sorry, sir, I cannot control this suit, Jarvis replied. Tony froze. What? You can't control the suit? Aren't you usually running targeting and flight controls? Jarvis's calm explanation threw him for a second. Normally, Jarvis handled flight stabilization, weapons targeting, all that. But the suit was telling him Jarvis couldn't take control. Had he been piloting his suits entirely by himself without realizing it? The idea clicked. The suit might be reading his brain signals. He'd toyed with that concept before. The Mark 42 in his past experiments had been able to assemble itself around him with a sort of thought control interface. But he'd never fully implemented a brainwave control system. If this suit could interpret his mental commands, that explained Jarvis's hands-off response. So this thing can read my brainwaves, Tony muttered. Soul, mind, whatever you want to call it in the magic world lexicon. He didn't have time to dig into the metaphysics now. He raised his hand and pictured an attack. In front of the suit's palm, a glowing orange sphere of energy formed and swelled to the size of a basketball. Under Tony's will, it necked into a thick, coherent beam and shot at a nearby low hill. Whoosh! Boom! The beam punched clean through the hill, the heat welding a jagged hole and turning earth to molten slag. The beam kept going and detonated against a distant cliff with a violent explosion. Holy crap, Jarvis, did you see that? Tony whooped. Of course, sir. I should note the attack can 20% of the arc reactor's output, Jarvis replied. I know. I'll fit more arc reactors when I get back and then upgrade them, Tony said. 20% from a single reactor for an attack like that was actually impressive. The solution was classic Tony, more juice. He'd done the same trick before. The Hulkbuster housed 13 arc reactors when he went big. He tightened his focus and gathered energy again. This time the suit molded the power into a dense, spherical projectile and launched it. Boom! The little hill had no chance. The projectile vaporized the ground, leaving a smoldering crater of black smoke and molten rock. Clap, clap, clap! Impressive, Mr. Stark. Your new suit is very powerful, a voice said, accompanied by slow applause. Tony pivoted and saw Noah walking toward him. Noah was wearing an Iron Man suit of his own, one that looked remarkably like the Destroyer,